The day my son handed my credit card to his father-in-law and said, "Use it, my dad has plenty of money," was the day I realized that love, when misunderstood, can turn into poison. I didn't shout. I didn't grab the card. I just stood there, watching the confidence in his smile, the ease in his tone, and the pride in his gesture, as if he was doing something heroic. But inside, I felt a storm rising that words couldn't describe. For years, I believed I had raised my son to value respect over luxury, gratitude over greed. I thought every sacrifice I made would teach him humility. The long nights at work, the endless overtime shifts, the moments I missed dinner just to pay the bills, all of it, I thought, would show him what effort truly means. But in that moment, with those careless words, I saw how far I'd failed. It wasn't just about money. It was about what that single act represented, a lifetime of silent lessons ignored. When he handed over my card, he wasn't just offering a piece of plastic. He was offering my years of struggle, my sweat, my trust, and my dignity, all wrapped in a swipeable gesture of entitlement. I looked at my son's father-in-law. His hesitant smile told me he was uncomfortable, but not enough to refuse. And my son? He looked proud. Proud that his father was successful, proud that he could show off comfort that wasn't his. He had mistaken kindness for weakness, generosity for a bottomless pit. My heart didn't break because of the money. It broke because of the realization that somewhere along the way, I had taught him to measure respect with wealth. Maybe I was too soft when I should have been firm. Maybe every time I said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it," I unknowingly built a man who thought responsibility was optional. The silence in that room was louder than thunder. My wife glanced at me, her eyes full of confusion, half shock, half fear of what might come next. But I said nothing. I let the silence speak, because words at that moment would have been too weak to hold the weight of my disappointment. In my head, questions screamed louder than anything else. How could my own son forget the value of what I built? How could he be so casual with something I worked decades for? I replayed memories. The first time I gave him lunch money, the first time I told him, "Always earn what you spend," the first time he promised, "I'll make you proud, Dad." And now, here we were. He had made me something, but proud wasn't the word. I wanted to believe it was just immaturity, a careless mistake, something he'd regret the moment he saw my face. But his confidence said otherwise. He didn't even flinch. He didn't realize the knife he'd just twisted. To him, it was a simple favor, an act of comfort between family. To me, it was the moment I lost the illusion that I was raising a man who understood respect. I took a deep breath and forced a smile. I didn't want to cause a scene in front of guests. Not yet. But inside, I knew something had changed forever. The father who once said, "Son, my home is your home," now had to wonder if he had accidentally raised someone who thought, "My father's life is my wallet." People think betrayal always comes with lies or secrets. But sometimes, betrayal comes dressed as kindness, when someone uses your own love against you. That night, as everyone laughed and chatted, I barely heard a word. My eyes stayed on the card lying on the table. It wasn't just a card anymore. It was a symbol of a lesson I'd failed to teach. A lesson I would now make sure he'd never forget. Because love without boundaries turns into entitlement. And entitlement without correction turns into destruction. I didn't know it then, but that single sentence, "Use it, my dad has plenty of money," was about to change everything between me and my son. Before that humiliating day, our life looked almost perfect from the outside. We were the family people envied, a loving father, a respectful son, a peaceful home. But what they didn't see were the cracks beneath the smiles, the moments when I gave too much and corrected too little. My son, Ethan, was my pride. From the moment he was born, I promised myself I'd give him everything I never had: comfort, opportunity, freedom. I grew up counting every penny, wearing shoes until the soles gave up, eating less so my parents could eat more. I didn't want my boy to feel that same struggle. So, when I finally made something of myself, after years of working double shifts, missing birthdays, skipping vacations, I gave him a life of ease. At first, I thought it was love. Providing for him made me proud. Seeing his joy became my reward. When he wanted a new phone, I bought it. When he asked for a car at 21, I surprised him with one. He said, "Dad, I'll make you proud one day." And I believed him, maybe too easily. My wife, Sarah, often warned me. She'd say, "You're giving him too much. He needs to understand limits." But I'd laugh it off. "He's just young," I'd say. "He'll learn when the time comes." I didn't realize that time never comes for those who never face consequences. Ethan grew up in a house where everything was within reach. If something broke, I fixed it. If something went wrong, I paid for it. Slowly, I became his safety net, not his example. I started noticing small signs. He'd leave the lights on, waste food, talk about expensive things as if money were infinite. One time, he joked to his friends, "My dad's card is my magic lamp." Everyone laughed, including me. But deep inside, a small part of me didn't find it funny. Still, I brushed it aside. That's what parents do sometimes. We ignore red flags because love blinds us. We hope the lessons we never enforced will somehow teach themselves. Then came the day he got married. I was proud, emotional, and hopeful that marriage would mature him. His wife, Lily, was sweet and humble, the kind of person who valued effort over comfort. Her father, Mr. Cole, was a quiet man who had lost his business a few years earlier. When Ethan told me he wanted to support his in-laws, I admired that. I thought maybe this was his turning point, a sign of compassion. But compassion without understanding quickly becomes carelessness. Soon after the wedding, I began noticing small changes. Ethan started talking like someone who believed he was above responsibility. He'd say things like, "Dad, money's not a big deal," or, "Why worry? You always handle it." He wasn't being cruel, just careless. He had never felt the sting of effort. I remember one evening, Sarah looked at me with tired eyes and said, "You've given him everything, but you forgot to give him boundaries." Her words stung because they were true. I had raised a boy who didn't know the difference between generosity and dependency. The day before the incident, Ethan came to me casually and said, "Dad, Mr. Cole's credit card got declined last week. He's embarrassed. Don't worry, I'll handle it." I asked, "Handle it how?" He smiled and said, "You'll see, Dad. I just don't want him to feel bad." I didn't think much of it. I trusted him. I thought maybe he meant helping with a small gift, a gesture of kindness. But what he meant by "handle it" was something I never could have imagined. That single misunderstanding, my belief that my son had grown into a man who understood respect, was my greatest mistake. Our relationship had always been built on love, but now I could see it was love without discipline. And love without discipline creates confusion, the kind that blurs right and wrong. If I had known what was about to happen, I would have sat him down that night and reminded him of everything money can't buy: respect, integrity, and humility. But I didn't. I went to bed believing tomorrow would be another ordinary day. It wasn't. Because tomorrow, in front of guests and family, my son would hand my card to his father-in-law. And in that moment, every unspoken lesson, every unchecked behavior, every silent warning I ignored would come back to face me. And for the first time in my life, I would see that sometimes, being a good father means saying no, even to the person you love the most. The day it happened began like any other. The sun was kind, the air was calm, and my home was filled with laughter. It was one of those weekends when both families, mine and Lily's, gathered for dinner. The smell of roasted chicken and spices filled the room, the kind of smell that usually meant peace and togetherness. But that evening, peace was an illusion, and togetherness was about to turn into humiliation. I remember sitting at the dining table, watching my son and his wife move around the kitchen, smiling and whispering like newlyweds. Sarah looked happy, and even Mr. Cole, the father-in-law, seemed relaxed. He had always been a polite man, quiet and humble. I respected that. He had gone through a lot financially, and Ethan had often mentioned wanting to help him get back on his feet. I thought that was noble. I thought maybe my son had finally learned compassion. Dinner went well at first. The room was filled with jokes, stories, and laughter. But beneath that laughter, something felt off. My instincts kept telling me something wasn't right. Ethan seemed too confident, too eager. He kept glancing at Mr. Cole as if waiting for something to happen. Then, after dessert, Mr. Cole stood up slowly and said, "Ethan, thank you for the dinner. I really appreciate your kindness. But I must say, I've been having some trouble lately. My car needs repairs and, well, I'll manage somehow." Before I could even respond, my son reached into his pocket, smiled proudly, and said, "No need to worry, sir. Here, use my dad's card. He's got plenty of money." For a moment I thought I had misheard him. The room froze. Even the ticking of the clock seemed to stop. Everyone turned to look at me, my wife, my daughter-in-law, her mother, and most painfully my son, who stood there as if he had done something heroic. My throat went dry. My pulse roared in my ears. I looked at the card he held out. My card, the same one I had worked years to earn the right to use freely. And there it was, now being handed over like a gift, like some public proof of wealth I never wanted to flaunt. "Ethan," I said quietly, trying to stay composed. "What did you just do?" He laughed lightly, brushing it off. "Dad, come on, it's nothing. Mr. Cole just needs a little help. You always say family supports each other, right? You've got enough. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. Those words echoed in my mind like a curse. Mr. Cole's face flushed with embarrassment. No, I can't. This isn't right," he stammered. But Ethan insisted, pushing the card closer. "Please, sir. My dad won't mind. He's a generous man." A generous man. He said it like a title. Like generosity was something I owed to everyone. Inside, I was burning. The humiliation of being spoken for, of being used as a symbol of wealth rather than a father, cut deeper than any insult could. My wife's eyes filled with disbelief, and Lily's hand trembled as she whispered, "Ethan, stop." But he didn't stop. He smiled proudly, as if he had just done something noble, something worth applause. In that single moment, I saw everything wrong with what I had taught him. He didn't see my silence as patience, he saw it as permission. He didn't see my love as sacrifice, he saw it as endless supply. I took a slow breath, stood up from the table, and reached out my hand. "Give me the card," I said firmly. My tone was calm, but my voice carried weight. The room fell silent again. He hesitated for a second, then laughed nervously. "Dad, you're taking this too seriously." "Give me the card," I repeated. He looked confused, almost offended. Slowly he handed it back. I took it from his hand, placed it in my wallet, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Son," I said, my voice steady but cold, "you just taught me something tonight. And it's a lesson I'll never forget." He looked at me, puzzled, half smiling, thinking I was joking. But I wasn't. The dinner ended in silence. Mr. Cole apologized softly, Lily cried quietly, and my wife avoided eye contact. Ethan, still unaware of the storm he had unleashed, muttered under his breath, "I was just trying to help." But help isn't help when it disrespects the one who gave you everything. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the empty dining room, staring at the chair where my son had sat, replaying every word he said. And I realized, sometimes the people we love most don't betray us with malice. They betray us with ignorance. And that ignorance comes from love that was never balanced with limits. That night, I made a silent promise. If love had turned my son blind to respect, then it was time to teach him what respect truly costs. That night felt heavier than any other. The laughter that once filled our home had been replaced by a silence so deep it almost echoed. Sarah tried to talk, but I couldn't hear anything except my own thoughts. Ethan's words played in my head over and over. "Use my dad's card. He's got plenty of money." I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling something I had never felt toward my own son. Disappointment that reached deeper than anger. By morning, I knew this conversation couldn't wait. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect, values, and boundaries that had been quietly erased over the years. When Ethan walked into the kitchen the next morning, his mood was light. He hummed a tune, poured coffee into his mug, and smiled like nothing had happened. That smile, so casual, so unbothered, made my chest tighten. "Sit down," I said quietly. He froze mid-sip. "What's wrong, Dad?" "Sit," I repeated. He He sat across from me, confused, trying to read my face. I took a deep breath, the kind fathers take when they're trying to control the storm in their chest. "Do you have any idea what you did last night?" I asked. He frowned. "Dad, come on. You're still upset about that?" "It wasn't a big deal. I was just helping Mr. Cole out. You always told me to be kind." I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. Kindness and carelessness are not the same thing. He rolled his eyes slightly, the way people do when they think they're being misunderstood. "Dad, I know you're old-fashioned, but it's just money. Mr. Cole's going through a rough time." I thought. "No, Ethan," I cut him off. "You didn't think. That's the problem." His expression hardened. "Why are you making it sound so dramatic? You've always helped people. You pay bills for others, donate, give to family. Why is this any different?" "Because you gave something that wasn't yours to give." My words landed like a stone. He blinked, unsure how to respond. "But you would have helped him anyway," he said quietly, almost pleading. "That's not the point," I said, my tone firm. "You didn't ask. You didn't even tell me. You made a decision with something that represents years of my work, my sacrifice, and my name. That card carries my responsibility, my reputation, and you tossed it like a business card." For a moment he looked stunned. Then his voice rose, defensive. "I just didn't want Mr. Cole to feel embarrassed. You're making it sound like I stole something. I was trying to do something good." I stared at him, my patience thinning. Good intentions don't excuse disrespect. His eyes met mine, stubborn, proud, refusing to understand. "You've always said money isn't everything. But now you're acting like it is." "No," I said softly, "money isn't everything. But respect is." The room went quiet. He looked down, his confidence fading. I could see the boy inside him, the one who had once run to me after school, the one who used to ask, "Did I make you proud today, Dad?" I missed that boy. I didn't know when he disappeared or how entitlement replaced him. "You've lived your whole life thinking comfort is guaranteed," I said. "You've never seen the nights I went hungry so you could eat, the mornings I drove hours to work before sunrise, the bills I paid when there wasn't enough left for myself. You've enjoyed everything, but you've understood nothing." He didn't speak. His hands fidgeted, his jaw tightened, but his eyes softened just enough to show guilt creeping in. "Dad, I didn't mean to hurt you," he said quietly. "I really didn't." "I know," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "You didn't mean to. But you did. Because you never learned that love has limits. You think generosity means permission. It doesn't." I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. "You're not a child anymore, Ethan. It's time you learn what it means to earn, not just to receive." He looked up, eyes wet, his pride crumbling. "What do you want me to do?" I turned toward the door, my heart aching. "I don't want you to do anything for me. I want you to start doing something for yourself. Earn something with your name on it. Then you'll understand why that card mattered." As I walked away, I could feel the shift in the air. For the first time, he wasn't my little boy looking for approval. He was a man realizing the weight of his own mistakes. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first real lesson he'd ever learn. For a few days after that confrontation, the house felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Ethan spoke less, avoided eye contact, and disappeared into his room for hours. Sarah moved around the house in silence, pretending to clean but really just avoiding the tension that hung between us. The walls that once echoed with laughter now absorbed nothing but regret. I thought maybe the lesson had finally sunk in. I hoped that my words had touched something in him, that maybe he'd reflect, apologize, and start to understand. But entitlement doesn't vanish overnight. It clings to people who've never felt the cold edge of accountability. One evening, as I sat at my desk going through bills, I noticed a notification on my phone, a transaction alert. My card had been used again. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I had taken my wallet everywhere that week and no one else had touched it. But when I looked closer, my stomach dropped. The purchase was small, but it was from a restaurant in the same neighborhood where Ethan lived. A wave of disbelief washed over me. He couldn't. I opened the door to his room and saw him sitting on his bed, scrolling through his phone. "Ethan," I said firmly. Did you use my card again? He looked up, startled, then sighed. Dad, it was just dinner. I forgot my wallet, and it was urgent. Don't make this a big deal. I stared at him, speechless. After everything that had happened, the confrontation, the disappointment, the promise of change, he still didn't understand. Do you even hear yourself? I said, my voice trembling with restrained anger. You call this not a big deal? Ethan, this isn't about the money. It's about trust. He rubbed his forehead and muttered, You're overreacting. It's not like I bought a car or something. That single sentence shattered whatever patience I had left. I had spent years believing love alone could fix everything, that eventually my kindness would teach him gratitude. But I was wrong. Love without correction doesn't heal, it spoils. I pulled the card from my wallet, held it in front of him, and said, You see this? This isn't magic. Every number on it represents hours of work, sacrifices you never saw. Every swipe costs something. And you treat it like air, something that will never run out. He stood up, defensive. Why are you being so hard on me? You've always said we're family. Family shares everything. Family doesn't take without asking, I snapped. My voice rose for the first time in years. You've confused love with ownership. You think because I love you, you can use me. But love isn't a free pass, Ethan. It's a responsibility. The argument grew louder. Sarah came running, her face pale. Please, stop shouting, she pleaded. But I couldn't stop. The years of silent disappointment were finally finding a voice. I pointed toward the door. From today, this ends. You will not touch my card again. You will not ask for money. You will not live like this anymore. He looked shocked, his pride wounded. What do you mean? I mean you're going to learn what it feels like to stand on your own. I'm cutting off every card, every payment, every convenience. If you want something, earn it. If you want to live like an adult, act like one. Sarah gasped. You can't just throw him into the deep end. Yes, I can, I said, my tone firm but calm now. Because the shallow water has made him forget how to swim. Ethan stared at me in disbelief. You're serious, he whispered. I've never been more serious in my life. He turned away, angry tears in his eyes. You'll regret this, Dad. Maybe, I said softly, but not as much as I regret watching you become someone I barely recognize. That night he packed a few things and left. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house like a final verdict. Sarah cried quietly, asking if I had done the right thing. I didn't answer. My chest ached, but I knew this was necessary. Sometimes, love must hurt to heal. Days turned into weeks. No calls. No messages. Just silence. Then one evening I received a text from him. 5 simple words. Dad, I got a job. For the first time in a long while I smiled. Maybe the pain had finally turned into purpose. Maybe this was the beginning of his redemption. Because sometimes, losing everything you take for granted is the only way to learn what it truly means to earn. The night I received Ethan's message, I must have read it a dozen times. Dad, I got a job. 5 words that carried the weight of months of silence, disappointment, and growing distance. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not pride yet, but hope. A small, cautious spark of it. I didn't reply right away. I wanted to give him space. This was his first step, and steps taken out of struggle should never be interrupted. But deep down, I wanted to know everything. Where he worked, how he got it, whether he was eating properly, if he still carried the same stubborn pride that once blinded him. 2 days later, I heard a knock at the door. It was late evening, and the sound startled both me and Sarah. When I opened it, there he was, standing with tired eyes, messy hair, and a kind of humility I had never seen before. He wasn't the same boy who once spoke carelessly. He looked smaller somehow, not in body, but in ego. The silence between us said more than words ever could. Can I come in? He asked softly. I nodded. He walked inside slowly, as if afraid of crossing boundaries that once didn't exist. Sarah rushed from the kitchen and hugged him, tears streaming down her face. He held her back, whispering, I missed you, Mom. Then he looked at me, hesitant, almost guilty, and said, "Dad, I owe you an apology." I didn't speak. I wanted him to continue, to let every word come from the heart. He took a deep breath. "When I left that night, I was angry. I thought you were cruel, that you didn't understand me. But when the money ran out, and I realized no one was there to rescue me, I saw what you were trying to teach me. The first week at work was hell. I was exhausted, underpaid, and embarrassed. But it made me understand what you've done your entire life." His voice cracked as he spoke, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes, not of frustration, but realization. "I used to think your card was just plastic," he continued. "But every time I got my paycheck and saw how small it was compared to how hard I worked, I remembered you. I remembered your words, that every swipe cost something. You were right, Dad. I never earned what I spent. I just took, and I'm sorry." The room was still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. I walked closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan," I said quietly, "you don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself understanding. What matters isn't the mistakes you made, it's what you do after them." He nodded, wiping his tears. "I know. I just wish I had listened sooner." I smiled faintly. We all learn at different times. Some lessons life whispers and others it shouts. You finally heard it. He took a folded envelope out of his pocket and handed it to me. "This is my first paycheck," he said. "I wanted you to have it. Not as payment, but as thanks. For everything." I opened it and looked at the modest amount inside. It wasn't much, but it was the most meaningful money I'd ever held. I handed it back to him and said, "Keep it. Use it for something that makes you proud. That's worth more to me than anything money could buy." He smiled, a real smile this time, one that came from humility, not pride. Over the next few weeks, Ethan visited often. He started helping around the house again, talking to me like a friend instead of someone he took for granted. He shared stories from work, long hours, difficult customers, and his first small promotion. Every story carried a hint of gratitude, a quiet acknowledgement that he now understood what effort truly meant. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he said, "Dad, do you think you'll ever trust me with your card again?" I laughed softly. "Maybe one day, but only when you have your own, and you've learned how to protect what's yours." He chuckled, nodding. "Fair enough." For the first time in a long while, I saw the man I always hoped he would become, grounded, grateful, and aware. That night, when I went to bed, Sarah whispered, "You did the right thing." Maybe I did. Maybe cutting him off wasn't cruelty. It was love in its most honest form, the kind that doesn't shield, but shapes. Because sometimes, the greatest gift a father can give his son isn't money, or comfort, or freedom. It's the chance to earn his own respect. Weeks passed, and life slowly found its rhythm again. Ethan visited often now, not for help or favors, but to share moments. The same boy who once handed my credit card to someone else now carried a wallet of his own, not filled with wealth, but with dignity. Watching him rebuild himself piece by piece reminded me that growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the wreckage of our mistakes. One evening, we sat together in the living room. He had come straight from work, his shirt wrinkled, his hands rough. He dropped into the chair beside me with a tired sigh, then smiled. "Dad, I finally saved enough to buy my own car." I looked at him, proud but calm. "Paid in full?" He grinned. "Every cent." That answer hit me deeper than I expected. Not because of the car, but because of the change. This was the same son who once believed money came from a bottomless source. Now, every dollar in his account carried the weight of effort. Every decision he made carried the awareness of cost. He leaned back, thoughtful. "You know, Dad," he said quietly, "I used to think you were being hard on me. But now I get it. You weren't angry that I used your card. You were heartbroken that I never learned to earn." I nodded slowly. "That's the thing about life, son. We don't realize what we're taking for granted until the world stops giving it to us." He stared ahead for a while, his voice softer now. "I'm thankful you didn't give up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." I smiled faintly. That's what parents do. We don't stop loving. We just start teaching differently. The room fell silent, The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. The kind that feels like healing. Sarah came in with tea, and for the first time in a long while, our laughter returned. It wasn't forced or polite, it was real. As the evening faded into night, Ethan stood up to leave. Before he walked out, he turned back and said, "Dad? I'll never forget the day you took that card back from me. At the time, I thought you were punishing me. Now I know, you were saving me." I didn't reply. I just smiled and nodded. Some truths don't need words. After he left, I sat by the window, staring into the quiet street, thinking about everything that had happened. I realized that life has a strange way of teaching lessons, not through comfort, but through discomfort, not through gain, but through loss. I thought about how many parents out there are like me, working hard, giving everything, believing love means never saying no. But I learned that love isn't about how much you give. It's about knowing when to stop giving so the other person learns to stand. Sometimes, we mistake generosity for kindness and silence for peace. But true kindness is teaching responsibility. True peace comes when the people you love finally understand respect. Not because you demanded it, but because they discovered its value on their own. So here's the truth I want every viewer to take from my story. If you keep rescuing someone from every mistake, you're not saving them, you're stealing their chance to grow. And if you're a son or daughter watching this, remember this, your parents' sacrifices aren't invisible. Every meal, every bill, every small comfort you enjoy carries their sleepless nights and silent prayers. Don't wait to lose their trust to realize its worth. Money can be replaced. Cards can be reissued. But the moment you lose respect, that's a debt no amount can repay. And if you're a parent, never be afraid to set boundaries. Love doesn't weaken when you say no, it strengthens. Because love without limits breeds entitlement. But love with discipline builds character. I looked out the window one last time that night and smiled. I didn't just get my son back. I got a man I could finally be proud of. And if my story reaches even one person who needs this reminder, then maybe everything I went through was worth it. That if you keep rescuing someone from every mistake, you're not saving them, you're stealing their chance to grow. And if you're a son or daughter watching this, remember this, your parents' sacrifices aren't invisible. Every meal, every bill, every small comfort you enjoy carries their sleepless nights and silent prayers. Don't wait to lose their trust to realize its worth. Money can be replaced. Cards can be reissued. But the moment you lose respect, that's a debt no amount can repay. And if you're a parent, never be afraid to set boundaries. Love doesn't weaken when you say no, it strengthens. Because love without limits breeds entitlement. But love with discipline builds character. I looked out the window one last time that night and smiled. I didn't just get my son back. I got a man I could finally be proud of. And if my story reaches even one person who needs this reminder, then maybe everything I went through was worth it. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe respect is worth more than money, hit the like button. Speech balloon comment, respect. If you agree that parents' sacrifices deserve gratitude.